My husband and his parents let me cover the $5,000 hotel bill for their anniversary. Then he casually said, "I want a divorce." My MIL shrugged. "You were never a real part of this family." I left, but an hour later, they called me in a frenzy because we were sitting in the grand dining room of the Ritz-Carlton in Laguna Beach, the air thick with the scent of overpriced wine and lobster. When my husband leaned back in his chair, swirled the last of his whiskey, and casually said, "I want a divorce," his mother barely blinked. She lifted her glass of wine, took a small sip, and shrugged. "Well, you were never a real part of this family anyway." I sat there, frozen. The server had just placed the check down, a thick leather folder that I knew held the damage from a weekend of excess. 5-star resort accommodations, luxury spa treatments, a yacht rental, and a private dinner that cost more than some people's rent. A weekend that I had paid for. And now, after covering a $5,000 bill to celebrate my in-laws' 40th anniversary, this was how they discarded me. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face neutral. I reached for my purse, slid my card into the check presenter, and stood up. "Noted," I said quietly. "Enjoy the rest of your night." And then I walked away. I didn't let them see my hands shaking as I exited the restaurant. I didn't let them see how my vision blurred from the sheer rage building in my chest. I made it to the elevator, hit the button, and as soon as the doors closed, I let out a shaky breath. How had I been so blind? I should have known. I did know deep down. The signs had always been there. My husband, ex-husband, I guess, came from money. Not new money, but old money. The kind of wealth that is passed down, not earned. The kind of wealth that comes with entitlement so deeply ingrained that they don't even recognize it as entitlement. The kind of wealth that makes them think they are better. I had never been good enough for them. They never said it outright, of course. They were too polite for that. But it was in the way my mother-in-law's lips pursed every time I mentioned my job. It was in the way my father-in-law ignored me unless he needed something. It was in the way my husband's sister sneered at my outfits unless they had a designer label. They tolerated me because I was useful. I planned the holidays. I hosted the parties. I bought the gifts. I paid when my husband conveniently forgot his wallet. I took care of all the details they couldn't be bothered with. And now that they had wrung me dry, they were discarding me like trash. I stepped out into the lobby, the cool air conditioning hitting my skin. My phone buzzed in my purse, probably my husband trying to do damage control, but I ignored it. I sat down on one of the plush chairs and pulled out my phone. If they thought they could get rid of me this easily, they had another thing coming. I opened my banking app. I went straight to the pending charges from the hotel. And then, with a slow, deliberate breath, I canceled the payment. I stared at the screen, watching the transaction disappear. My heart was still racing. But now it was from something different, satisfaction. I stood up, adjusted my dress, and walked out of the hotel. I was almost to my car when my phone started buzzing again. This time I picked up. It was my mother-in-law, and for the first time in her life, she sounded panicked. "What did you do?" she screeched. I smiled. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "The hotel," she shrieked. "The bill. They're saying the payment was declined. They're kicking us out." I let out a small, satisfied breath. "You paid for this," she screamed. "Fix it." I took my time before answering. Then in the calmest voice I could manage, I said, "Oh no, that was your son's responsibility. Since you know, I was never a real part of this family." And then I hung up. I didn't even make it out of the parking lot before my phone started blowing up again. First my husband, ignored. Then my father-in-law, ignored. Then my husband again, this time leaving a voicemail. I let it sit there. I pulled out of the hotel driveway and onto the main road, my hands still trembling with adrenaline. I should have felt relieved, triumphant even. But my mind was spinning. I had wasted 5 years of my life on these people. 5 years of bending over backward to make them accept me. 5 years of paying for things that weren't my responsibility. 5 years of being their doormat, their personal assistant, their walking bank account. And now, just like that, it was over. But I wasn't done yet. I was halfway home when another number popped up on my screen, one I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. I pressed the button, putting the call on speaker. "Hello," a hesitant voice spoke on the other end. "Mrs. Calloway?" Hearing my married name made my stomach twist, but I forced my voice to stay steady. "Who's this?" "This is Andrew from the front desk at the Ritz-Carlton." I'm really sorry to bother you, but we have a bit of an issue with the payment for the Callaway reservation. I nearly laughed. Oh, I bet they did. I played dumb. Oh, what seems to be the problem? Well, there was a long pause, as if he was trying to find the right words. It looks like the card on file was declined, and your in-laws are refusing to provide another form of payment. I raised an eyebrow. Refusing? They said the bill was supposed to be covered by you, he continued, sounding increasingly uncomfortable. And they're getting pretty upset. I could picture it. My mother-in-law throwing one of her perfectly practiced outrage fits. My father-in-law demanding to speak to a manager. My husband standing off to the side, probably silent, waiting for me to fix it like I always did. But I wasn't fixing anything for them anymore. I sighed, making my voice sound genuinely apologetic. Oh no, there must have been a misunderstanding. Oh yes, see, my husband informed me tonight that we're getting a divorce. I let that sink in for a second. So I naturally assumed he would be handling the family expenses from now on. The man on the other end made a small choking sound, like he really wished he hadn't picked up this shift. I'm afraid I won't be providing another payment method, I continued, voice smooth. But I do hope they figure something out. Best of luck. And then I hung up. I made it home, took a long, hot shower, and poured myself a glass of wine. Then I sat on the couch and opened my messages. My husband had finally texted him. Are you serious? You left us stranded at the hotel? They're saying they'll call the police if we don't pay him. Fix this now. I stared at the messages, a slow, icy calm settling over me. This man had just blindsided me with a divorce after I paid for everything, after I spent years dealing with his family's smug, condescending attitude. And now he thought he could just order me to clean up his mess. I took my time typing out my response. Me, I don't take orders from you. Good luck. I hit send and tossed my phone on the couch. For the first time in years, I felt free. But then 20 minutes later, the real twist came. A real call from my lawyer. I answered immediately. Hey, what's going on? His voice was urgent. I just got an interesting call from your husband's lawyer. I sat up straighter. And they're trying to freeze your accounts. I felt my breath catch. What? They're claiming that since you were the primary financial provider in the marriage, they have a right to a substantial portion of your assets. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just about a divorce. This was a financial ambush. I gripped my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. They're trying to what? I said, my voice sharp. My lawyer sighed. Your husband's attorney contacted me an hour ago. They're arguing that because you covered the majority of financial expenses during your marriage, your husband is entitled to at least half of your assets. Possibly more since he claims you controlled the finances. I nearly choked. Controlled the finances? Was he out of his damn mind? I had supported this man, paid for vacations, covered bills when he was between jobs, and now he had the audacity to claim I was financially controlling. I forced myself to stay calm. Can they do that? They can try, my lawyer said, but they're going to have a hard time proving it. He hesitated. That said, if they successfully get a temporary freeze on your accounts, things could get complicated. My head was spinning. I had just walked out of that hotel feeling victorious. Now I was staring down the possibility of losing everything. I took a deep breath. What do I need to do? I already filed a motion to block their request, he said, but we need to act fast. There's a good chance they'll try to move money into his accounts before we can legally stop them. That's when it hit me. I had joint accounts with my husband, not many but enough. One savings account, one credit card, and a couple of investment funds where I had stupidly listed him as a secondary holder. If he was trying to pull something, that's exactly where he'd start. I hung up with my lawyer and immediately logged into my banking app. The first account I checked was our joint savings. And sure enough, $20 had just been transferred out. I felt cold all over. I checked the next account. Another $7,500 gone. Panic rose in my chest. This wasn't just about our divorce anymore. This was outright theft. I grabbed my keys and ran to my car. I was going to the bank. Now, as I drove, my phone started ringing again. It was him. I ignored it. Then another call came in. His mother. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly why she was calling. She had known. She had sat there at that dinner, sipping wine, acting smug while her son planned to rob me blind. I let the call go to voicemail. Then I got to the bank, stormed inside, and went straight to a teller. I need to freeze all joint accounts immediately, I said, my voice like steel. The woman behind the counter blinked in surprise but nodded. Of course, ma'am, let me pull up your information. I waited, my pulse hammering in my ears. Then she frowned. It looks like your husband was here about 20 minutes ago. He withdrew everything from the savings account. My stomach twisted. And, she continued, biting her lip, he also tried to access your personal checking account. My eyes snapped up to hers. He what? She nodded. He claimed you authorized it, but the request was flagged because your name is the sole owner on that account. That's why we didn't process it. I exhaled, my hands gripping the counter. He had tried to drain everything. I looked at her, my voice deadly calm. I want to remove him from every joint account. Now she nodded quickly and started typing. I'll get that done right away. As she worked, my mind raced. He must have known I'd figure it out fast. He must have left that hotel, gone straight to the bank, and started grabbing everything he could before I could stop him. And the worst part? This wasn't impulsive. This was planned. He had been waiting for the right moment, and now I had to find a way to make him pay. I stood at the bank counter, heart pounding, as the teller worked to lock my accounts down. My soon-to-be ex had drained our joint savings, stolen thousands, and even had the audacity to try and take my personal money. He had planned this, and he wasn't working alone. My phone buzzed again, another call from my mother-in-law. I ignored it. I knew exactly why she was panicking. She had helped him, probably encouraged him, maybe even thought they could get away with it. Not today. The teller finished and looked up. Your accounts are secure now. I also flagged the recent withdrawals for fraud investigation. I exhaled. Good. Now I need to file a formal fraud complaint. She nodded and called over a manager. Within minutes, I had everything in motion, legal complaints, fraud reports, and paperwork that would send his stolen money under a microscope. But I wasn't stopping there. As I left the bank, I called my lawyer. Freeze every asset tied to my name, I said. If he tries to touch anything else, I want it flagged immediately. You got it, he said. But you might also want to file a police report. This isn't just a bad divorce, it's theft. I gritted my teeth. Oh, I plan to. I drove straight to the police station. By the time I finished filing my report, it was almost midnight. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, but I wasn't done yet. I went home, poured myself another glass of wine, and pulled up my husband's emails. See, he wasn't very smart. He used the same passwords for everything, and I still had access. I scrolled through his inbox looking for anything useful, and then I found it. An email from his lawyer, dated a month ago. It was all there. The drafted divorce papers, the financial strategy, the plan to blindside me at dinner after I had paid for everything. My hands tightened around my phone. This wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated fraud. And then, a few emails down, I found something even worse. A conversation between him and his mother. Him. I'll make sure she pays for the whole trip. She won't see it coming. Am I all good? She always acted like she belonged in this family. This will be a nice reminder that she doesn't. I swallowed down the pure rage building inside me. They had planned this together, and now I had the proof. I forwarded everything to my lawyer. Hope you're awake because I want to destroy them. 15 minutes later, he called me back. Oh, this is good, he said, his voice almost gleeful. This isn't just fraud. This is conspiracy to commit fraud. I took a slow breath. What's next? Next? He chuckled. Next, we take everything from them. The next morning, my soon-to-be ex and his dear mother were probably still sleeping off their expensive wine and tantrums when the legal storm started rolling in. First, the bank flagged the withdrawals as fraudulent. Since I had proof they weren't authorized and were done after he announced his intent to divorce me, the bank locked the transactions for investigation. That meant he couldn't access the money he stole. Then the police contacted him. Because guess what? Draining a joint account after filing for divorce is considered marital fraud in California. And since he tried to take money from my personal account, that was outright theft. By noon, my lawyer filed an emergency financial restraining order against him. That froze everything he had, including assets his parents had transferred to him over the years. Then came the civil lawsuit. I was suing him for the stolen money plus damages. And because I had proof his mother was involved, she got dragged into the lawsuit too. By the afternoon, my phone finally rang. It was him. I picked up. Hello? His voice was tight. What the hell did you do? I smiled. Oh, what seems to be the problem? You froze my accounts. The bank is saying they flagged my withdrawals. The police are involved? Are you serious? I sipped my coffee. Very. You can't do this, he sputtered. Oh, but I can, I said smoothly. See, you were the one who tried to rob me, and now you're dealing with the consequences. He was silent for a moment. Then, in a lower, desperate tone, he said, Can we just talk? I laughed. We are talking. But if you mean a conversation where I agree to clean up your mess, not happening. You don't have to ruin my life over this. Funny, I mused, because that's exactly what you tried to do to me. I let that sink in for a second before hanging up. I blocked his number. Then I sat back, sipping my coffee, feeling lighter than I had in years. The fallout was glorious. The police didn't just take my report lightly, they dug deep. Turns out my husband had been skimming money from other accounts too, including his own family's trust fund. When his parents found out, they turned on him immediately. My mother-in-law? Oh, she tried to play innocent. But the email proof of her involvement in the fraud was enough to slap her with her own legal troubles. By the time my lawyer was done, my husband had no choice but to settle. I got everything. The money he stole, returned, plus damages. The house, mine, his car, sold to cover legal fees. My mother-in-law's reputation, in shambles. And the best part, that luxurious hotel they tried to screw me over for? My lawyer made sure the lawsuit included reimbursement for every single penny I spent that weekend. In the end, my ex was left with nothing. No money, no house, no family backing him up. And as for me, I walked away with my head held high, richer, wiser, and finally free from the toxic weight of that family. Justice served.